Hey everyone, it's Jeffrey back again from the sports porch. Well, not really on the sports porch. In the sports bedroom once again. I don't know. I guess I just prefer doing it this way instead of being outside. So this is video number 2 of me not being on the porch, and this is also video number 2 of these being videos and not podcast episodes. Let me know what you guys prefer. I am open to returning to the podcast style, but I don't know. I think I'd like to shift more of my focus to the video side of things on YouTube. So once again, just let me know what you guys think. Podcast or videos? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the topic at hand in this video. So growing up, I was a pretty big UFC fan. I used to watch guys the likes of Anderson Silva, Matt Hughes. I don't know why any others can't come to my mind. Lyoto Machida, John Jones. Just this generation of great fighters who have now passed on. Now we have this new wave of fighters coming in. And two of these guys who are sort of steamrolling this new wave of UFC is Israel Adesayna and his opponent, Paulo Costa. And they just so happen to be fighting each other this weekend. Both men are undefeated. So let's go ahead and take a look at the matchup here. So first off, let's start off with the champion, Mr. Israel Adesayna, the style bender. He is 19-0 in MMA. He's 8-0 in the UFC. Currently holds the middleweight champion in the UFC. He stands at 6'4", weighing 185 pounds with an 80-inch reach. And the main highlights about Israel Adesayna is in the name itself, style bender. He is no... Why is the phone ringing? Why is there something always bothering me when I record? I'll be right back.
2 hours later.
It wasn't even anyone important. It was literally just some random robocall. Somehow still find distractions even when I'm off the porch. Anyway, Israel Adesayna, as I was saying, he is this sort of style-bending fighter. He does a lot of stand-up, a lot of switching stances from orthodox to southpaw. He's a really good kickboxer. He's very precise in his striking. Really good at evading incoming attacks. And the main thing that Israel Adesayna has going for him is his creativity in his striking. And mainly just all of his amazing feints, his amazing footwork. Very dynamic fighter. You will get a lot of different looks while fighting Israel Adesayna. He's kind of a matchup nightmare in a sense. He also gives very good knee kicks as well as light knee kicks. What am I saying? Very good knees as well as leg kicks. Really good at using his entire body in the stand-up. So then let's go ahead and take a look at his opponent for this matchup, Mr. Borrachinha himself, Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa comes into this match at 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing in once again at 185 pounds, although he's probably going to be north of 200 actually coming into the fight, with a reach of 72 inches. So a pretty big disparity there in the favor of Israel Adesayna. So if Israel Adesayna is all about precision, then Paulo Costa is the exact opposite. Paulo Costa is what many people would call a bully fighter. He is very powerful, comes at you with relentless force. He's currently 13-0 in MMA, 5-0 in the UFC. And as I said before, just look at these highlights. Paulo Costa is a machine. He comes forward at his opponents with relentless force. And his biggest attribute to me is his chin. Or from what it seems like, lack thereof it. Because it doesn't even matter if he gets hit, really. He continues to push forward, sometimes even getting hit on the chin, not being fazed by it, coming forward and throwing an even tougher shot back at his opponent. He also throws very good leg kicks as well, destroying his opponent's legs throughout the course of a fight. Really tries to get his opponents up against the cage, and all in all just attacks with relenting force. So as you can see here, the big matchup at question is power versus precision. Israel Adesayna, very quick on his feet, really likes to pick and choose his shots, a very counterattacking fighter, if you will. We saw this in the Yoel Romero fight, where Yoel didn't really take the fight to Israel, and he was perfectly fine with sitting back and just getting a shot wherever he could. Almost like I don't know if I would say scraping by, but that's what it comes off as. Whereas with Borrachinha, he is the exact opposite. Israel Adesayna will be getting a lot of pressure, presumably, from him, and that's what makes this fight so interesting. You have such a defensive fighter in Adesayna versus such an offensive fighter in Paulo Costa, whose styles really differ in a very good way to each other. They both counter each other in a lot of different areas, and the best way to sort of look at how these opponents potentially match up against each other is some of their past opponents. So first off, taking a look at how Paulo Costa could potentially get the upper hand against Israel Adesayna, we have to go back to a fight against one of the best Ultimate Fighters in history, Uriah Hall. Now, Uriah Hall hasn't done much in the UFC since winning the Ultimate Fighter, or coming up in second place, that is, but he poses a lot of the same fighting style that Israel Adesayna does. Granted, Adesayna does everything virtually better. So like Adesayna, Uriah is a very creative fighter. He throws a lot of different punches, a lot of different kicks, as well as sometimes switching his stance or throwing things from the southpaw stance. And you can see in this fight when Uriah stands in the orthodox position, he seems to be landing more shots on Costa, whereas when he switches to the southpaw stance, he gets lit up like a Christmas tree. And that will be an interesting thing to watch for in this fight, is whether or not Costa can take advantage of the times when Adesayna will presumably switch to the southpaw stance. It will also be interesting to see if Adesayna even bothers trying to use this southpaw stance very much, knowing this going into the fight. Another thing we can see from this Hall versus Costa fight is how well Costa does in pressuring him and getting him up against the cage, really getting in his face, and when he does take a shot, it appears as if it barely bothers him, or if anything, it seems like that's fuel for Costa. Is how he just wants to keep pushing forward. So as we can see toward the end of this fight, eventually Costa keeps pressing forward, and eventually gets him to his favorite spot against opponents, against the cage. This is where Borrachinha is his deadliest. Once he gets opponents against the cage, he uses that big power and relentlessly attacks them. And this is eventually what did in Uriah Hall. So this is where we could potentially see some chinks in the armor from Adesayna. We know that Adesayna does not like to be up against the cage, and it'll be interesting to see if Costa can get him there. Another area to note where Costa could potentially have the advantage if it goes there is in the ground game, as he has a significantly better ground game than Adesayna, who rarely gets to the ground. However, Adesayna does have some decent takedown defense, although I do doubt that this fight will be going to the ground, as both of these guys prefer standing up. But that is an area to look at for the potential fight if Costa decides he wants to switch the levels up a little bit. So now that we've looked at Paulo Costa's potential first viewing of what an Adesayna-esque fighter would look like, let's go on the flip side of that and see someone that Adesayna has already fought, that Costa has fought as well, that's right in his wheelhouse. And I'm talking about none other than Mr. Yoel Romero. This guy hits very hard and is very similar in the sense to Costa, in that when he wants to attack, he just keeps coming at you and has this insane power. But what Romero does differently than Costa is he is willing to sit back a little more and be a little more patient. So Adesayna won't have seen this relentless aggression from Costa before. But we can look to Romero as his potential precursor bout, if you will, to this Costa fight. A lot of people will argue and say that Romero should have won this fight, especially in the first 2 rounds, where it looked like he did a majority of the damage against Adesayna. But in the latter championship rounds, this is where Adesayna started to really pick and choose, and Romero was somewhat okay with just sitting back. As you can see here at the end of the fight, Adesayna isn't really doing much. He's sort of just picking his shots, getting his leg kicks and headshots when he can, and you can see Romero is not very happy with that, and sort of letting Adesayna sort of dance around him on the outside of the ring. But this poses another question about Paulo Costa that potentially Adesayna could exploit: his lack of experience in the championship rounds. So Paulo Costa still has yet to fight in a 5-round bout, which could spell trouble for him, as Adesayna has now fought in multiple championship fights. Another factor into this is that Paulo Costa has been sidelined for over a year with an injury. These two were supposed to have this fight much sooner than they did, but we can only be so lucky. So that's my breakdown of these fighters' styles and how they'll potentially go against each other. So the only question left is, who's going to win this thing? In my mind, as much as I would love to see a guy like Costa win it, who is infinitely likable, as well as has this huge personality that just bounces off the walls, and a very entertaining fighter throughout the whole match, I would say my biggest comparison to him is Justin Gaethje, in the way that both of these guys are just looking to put on a show. But at the end of the day, I have to give the edge to Adesayna, considering his not only his reach advantage, but also the fact that he has fought in championship rounds before, those being number 4 and 5. It gives Adesayna the edge here, as I would like to see Paulo Costa fight in some more 5-round matches. I do think that Costa can be a middleweight champion eventually, but I'm not sure if he can beat Adesayna in this bout. So my decision in this fight is that they will go a full 5 rounds, with Adesayna picking up the unanimous decision. So that's my breakdown of Israel Adesayna versus Paulo Costa. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who do you think is going to win this fight? Adesayna or Costa? And who do you want to win this fight? I'm personally rooting for Paulo Costa, although like I said, I do think that Adesayna will win here. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys on the next one. So I just finished recording this. You guys are probably wondering, it's probably been on your mind the whole video, is the dog still here? And the answer to that is yes. She's actually right on here. I'm just stood up for the video. I thought it'd be better for me, and all. Standing up is good for you, believe it or not. So as you can see here, there's Miss Ginger. She's very tired today. I'll leave her be. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later.